of heckling. You know, there hasn't been enough heckling tonight. I feel like everybody's been silent. So, yeah. So I don't own a camera, and I often, you know, sketch things on pieces of paper, write down things I want to remember, and they sit in a box in the corner of my room for me to, you know, find at a later point in time. So I'm always making up for this lack of camera with drawing. And this summer, I was invited to go to Yellowstone National Park on a road trip with a colleague from the University of Pittsburgh, and I, you know, of course, jumped on it. I wanted to go out west. It was going to be a great experience. So I wanted to record my experiences somehow, and what better way than to draw them? So I brought a sketchbook along and started drawing the things that I saw. What caught my interest first were light posts and power lines. I drew lots and lots of power lines. They were different, you know, every state that I went to, they had different sorts of power lines, and you'll see lots of slides of power lines. So as I drew, I noticed similarities and differences, you know, how homes changed as I went across the country, how road signs were different from Pittsburgh, how they were different colors, and how they evolved as I moved further and further west. We took a route through South Dakota, so the speed limit was about 80 miles an hour. So for me to catch something to sketch, it was a glance. You know, I glanced at something and I would remember it, and then I would just put it in my sketchbook. So being quick was the key. So as a result, these drawings became very subjective because they weren't accurate by any means. They're also subjective because everybody sees things differently. So what was interesting to me may not have been interesting to somebody else, and vice versa. So, and there was also this thing, you know, there was a single element that I was interested in that governed my drawing, whatever I drew. So as I was drawing things on the road, I placed more of an emphasis on the general rather than the specific in my drawings. I had to just come up with a general idea, find some lines. They weren't accurate. They weren't, you know, whatever. So all of the drawings that I took, that I made took less than a minute to draw. I would just scribble them out and say, okay, this is the impression that I have of whatever I saw. And they're not photorealistic. But rather they have a very personal relevance to me because I, instead of looking through the lens of a camera, had to pick an element that was important to me, and I emphasize that in my drawings. So when I did have the experience of having a camera during my travels, I tended to be a little trigger happy, taking thousands of pictures in a week, rolls and rolls of films, and I would get home and look through them, and I would say, oh my gosh, why did I take pictures of this? Why did I, you know, why was I photographing so many things? And they sit in storage. They sit in boxes along with my sketches. You're supposed to heckle. So the drawing forced me to be more selective in what it was that I wanted to capture, rather than getting the whole picture in, you know, in a shot here.
How many sheep?
How many sheep? There were hundreds of sheep. They were just lining the sides of the road. It was really flat, and they were just sheep as far as the eye can see. So I used less detail in my drawings. It was more general. I also used text a lot. I wrote notes, and this was to emphasize things that I maybe couldn't draw or didn't have time to draw or wanted to remember. So you'll see a slide later where there's like a picture with hillsides, and it says hillsides and it says clay cuts and things like that, because it's a rather two-dimensional drawing, but then the text adds to it to make it have meaning. And I learned to see things differently by drawing them rather than taking pictures of them. So it was a good learning experience for me, and yeah, that was great. That was great. They're very They're not very green out west. Oh, there were also signs for Wall Drug, which is this drugstore in Wall, South Dakota, where I got my boots that I'm wearing. They started in Minnesota, which was about 450 miles away, and they say they have signs on the moon, Wall Drug, blah, 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 miles away. And they started in Minnesota, and we're about every 5 miles until we got to Wall Drug, which was, 450 miles away from there. There's the hillsides picture. So making this visual record had more of a personal relevance for me because I was the one creating the images to remember whatever it was that I saw. Instead of that was a sparkling water on the airplane that the stewardess put a lime in, and I was very impressed with, so I had to sketch that out. Sorry. But yeah, the camera encourages me to be lazy. I put less thought into what I do see, and drawing really gave my memories more of a purpose. And there's going to be one more slide of a bridge that I saw on the plane, and that'll be it. I guess I'm before my time, so that's, yeah.
Yeah! Thanks, Maria. I forgot to mention